I'm 86 years old, and the most comforting thing anyone ever told me turned out to be a lie. Not a cruel lie, not an intentional one, but a lie all the same. My name is Walter, and I have been carrying certain things for 60 years now that haven't healed at all, not even a little. I want to talk to you today about that, about what actually happens to pain when time passes, because I think most of us have been told a story about it that isn't true, and I think that false story has quietly made things harder for a lot of people than they needed to be. When I was 26 years old, my younger brother Raymond died. He was 23. A car accident on a Tuesday morning in November, the kind of ordinary Tuesday that had no business being the day everything changed. I remember exactly where I was standing when my mother called. I was in the kitchen of the first apartment I ever rented making coffee. The window above the sink faced east, and the morning light was coming through it in that thin, pale way it does in autumn. I remember the coffee. I remember the light. I remember the way my mother's voice sounded like something inside her had already given up before she finished the first sentence. And I remember very clearly in the weeks and months that followed how many people said it to me. Time heals. Give it time. It gets easier with time. People said it the way you say something when you have nothing else to give someone. And I understood that. I was grateful for it even. Because what else do you say to a 26-year-old man who has just lost his brother? But here is what I know now, 60 years later, that I did not know then. Time did not heal that. Time passed. That is all time ever does. It passes. And Raymond did not come back, and the fact of his absence did not shrink or soften or become something I got used to. What happened instead was something much stranger and much harder to explain, and I have spent a long time looking for the right words for it. I kept living. That is the only way I can say it. I kept getting up in the morning and making coffee and going to work and eventually marrying a woman named Clara who had dark eyes and laughed too loudly in movie theaters and who I loved with the whole of myself for 41 years until she too was gone. I had children. I had ordinary Tuesdays that were just ordinary Tuesdays. I built a life that had real joy in it, genuine joy, the kind that isn't performed for anyone. And Raymond was always there inside all of it, not healed, not resolved, just present, a part of the permanent furniture of who I was. And I began to realize slowly over many years that the people who told me time heals were describing something they wanted to be true, something that would be tidier, something that would mean grief has a finish line you eventually cross, and then you are free of it and you move on. But grief doesn't work that way. Loss doesn't work that way. Not the real kind. Not the kind that comes from loving someone fully. What actually happens, I think, is this. You grow around it. The pain doesn't go anywhere. It stays exactly where it is. But you expand. You accumulate more life, more love, more ordinary mornings and difficult years and small moments of unexpected beauty, and all of that gathers around the grief and holds it in place. It doesn't disappear. It just becomes one part of something larger. And that is a completely different thing from healing. I want to say that again because I think it matters. It is a completely different thing from healing. Because if you believe time heals and then you find yourself 20 years later still feeling the shape of what you lost, you will think something is wrong with you. You will think you are broken or weak or that you are grieving incorrectly somehow. And that is a terrible thing to carry on top of everything else. I have met people in their 60s and 70s and 80s who are still privately ashamed that they still miss someone, still ashamed that certain songs or certain smells or certain light on a certain kind of morning still reaches into them and finds something that was never resolved. And I want to tell every one of those people that there is nothing wrong with them. They are not broken. They simply love someone real. Clara died 11 years ago. We had 41 years together, which is more than many people get, and which I am deeply grateful for. And I will tell you honestly that not a single day has passed since then in which I have not felt her absence. Not in a dramatic way, not in a way that stops me from living or from finding pleasure in things, but in a quiet, permanent way, the way you feel the absence of a room in a house that used to exist. You know where it was. You remember the dimensions of it, and you notice always that it isn't there anymore. That is not something time fixed. That is something I live with, and I have come to believe that living with something, really living with it, without demanding that it resolve or disappear or become something more manageable, is one of the quieter forms of courage available to a human being. I think about my children sometimes and what I hope for them, not in terms of success or happiness the way young people think about those things, but in terms of what I hope they understand by the time they reach my age. And one of those things is this. I hope they stop waiting for time to do the work, because time won't do it. Time is not a healer. Time is just the medium we move through while we do the real work ourselves, which is the slow, unglamorous work of learning to carry what we carry without being destroyed by it. Learning to let the weight of real love and real loss become part of the structure of who we are rather than something foreign lodged inside us that we are trying to remove. I have carried Raymond for 60 years. I have carried Clara for 11. And I have carried smaller things too, mistakes I made, words I didn't say, moments I moved past too quickly, people I underestimated or took for granted or failed in ways I only understood later when it was no longer possible to go back and do it differently. None of that healed. None of it resolved into something clean and finished. It is all still there, woven into me, and I am, I think, more honestly myself because of it than I would have been if any of it had simply faded away. There is something I have come to believe instead of time heals. It is quieter than that phrase and less comforting in the short term, and I think it is true. I believe that what we carry, when we carry it honestly and without pretending it is lighter than it is, eventually becomes wisdom. Not the kind of wisdom you can explain in a list or pass to someone like an object, but the kind that changes the quality of your attention. The kind that makes you slower to dismiss what someone else is going through. The kind that makes you understand, really understand, that most people around you are carrying something significant that you cannot see. And that understanding, I think, is the closest thing to peace that most of us are going to find. I am 86 years old. I have had a long time to watch how people move through loss and how they talk about it and what they tell each other and what they keep private. And the thing I want to say to you, whoever you are watching this, whatever you are carrying right now or have been carrying for years, is simply this. You don't have to wait for it to go away. It may not go away. That doesn't mean something is wrong with you. It means you loved something real, and real things leave real marks, and those marks are yours, and you can live a full life, a genuinely full life with them. Time will pass. It always does. But the work is yours, and you are more capable of it than anyone told you.